stepping out from behind my desk to talk to you some more with you, our patients, about dietary pattern and the sorts of foods and drinks that we think fit with the lifestyle pattern that we're asking you to adopt. Today we'll talk some about protein as a macronutrient and what some good sources of protein are, both in preparation for and after bariatric surgery, but also for those wanting to lose weight and improve health without bariatric surgery. So firstly, let's recap the important components of the dietary pattern that we're asking you to adopt long term. A dietary pattern that at its core is about controlling your insulin levels. Lowering your insulin levels is required to reverse your insulin resistance and allow your body tissues to release and burn away your fat. Firstly, we prioritise protein, which is the first part we're covering today. We do not fear natural fat, in particular fat that comes naturally with protein and the natural fruit fats. And we control and limit our carbohydrates, most particularly refined carbohydrates and sugars. We try and maintain time gaps between taking in energy, including one gap each day of at least 12 hours or perhaps more. And we mainly eat and drink natural whole foods, avoiding ultra-processed foods. So let's talk protein first. Protein is made up of components called amino acids. These are natural building blocks of the body that are essential to life. Our liver can make most of the necessary amino acids from other components, but there are three that it can't make. So we do consider protein an essential food group. For all of our patients, bariatric surgery or not, it should be prioritised in every meal. And in the early weeks after bariatric surgery, you eat little else apart from protein. Protein in our diet is satiating, which means it strongly contributes to your sense of satisfaction or fullness after meals. The other key question, what effect does it have on my insulin levels? Well, remember, we want to eat foods that don't tend to cause spikes in our insulin. Protein does cause an insulin rise, but not a high spike and not for a long time. So for every meal, think protein first. You don't need to measure how much protein you're eating, just like you don't need to count your calories. Probably the easiest way to recognise good protein sources is just the percentage, if the food has a label. So probably more than 10% protein is best, which means more than 10 grams of protein per 100 grams. Really good sources of protein can go up to 25% or 30%. Protein can be found both in animal food and plant food. Plant-based protein is certainly adequate, although generally our bodies aren't able to extract protein from plant foods quite as easy as it can from animal sources. A mixture of both, in my view, is probably ideal. Meat is a very important source. Try and choose grass-fed meat if you can, because that was the traditional food the animals ate rather than grain-fed. But often non-grass-fed, non-free range may be more budget-friendly, and that's okay. You don't need to buy lean meat, and you don't need to trim the fat off meat in general. So lamb when it's in season, beef if you can find it at an affordable price, chicken drumsticks, chicken, pork, mince, and I would probably choose the higher fat percentage. Sausage is okay. Be careful though that it's just meat and no carbohydrate filler, so I'd avoid things like sizzlers and pre-cooked sausages. Stay away from breaded meat such as Wiener Schnitzel because that has unnecessary carbs with it. So natural meats with their fat attached, cooked in simple natural ways. Our current food guidelines recommend limiting red meat and limiting deli meat such as bacon, ham, etc. Because there's some observational data suggesting slightly higher rates of bowel and stomach cancer. We may talk about this again in the future, but what I would say is this. The data is observational and prone to potential bias. For example, red meat intake is commonly part of a Western industrialised dietary pattern, which is also high in other things such as refined carbs, sugars and seed oils. Observational data struggles to allow for these other factors that may contribute. Secondly, humans have been eating red meat for as long as humans have existed. So it's hard to understand how it can be linked to more recent increases in bowel cancer incidence. So my view on this for my metabolic patients is this. You do not need to limit red meat in the context of the dietary pattern that we recommend, which is a diet which is low in refined carbs, sugars and processed foods. Probably limit the amount that you char grill red meat because the charring may be bad in excess. And probably don't overindulge in preserved meats such as bacon, ham, salami, etc., particularly if they have nitrates or nitrites in them as part of the preserving. But otherwise, enjoy natural red meats and some deli meats as part of your diet. Fish is an excellent source of protein, although fresh fish can be expensive to buy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with canned fish. In fact, canned fish may even be the best because it tends to be the oily fish. Now, oily fish doesn't sound nice, but all that means is that they have fat in the soft tissues and they tend to be very rich in omega-3, which is an essential fatty acid for humans that we can't make ourselves. So at least twice a week, try and have some form of oily fish such as tuna, salmon, or my personal favourite, sardines. If you want a candidate for a superfood, sardines come pretty close. High in protein and fat, omega-3 and a host of micronutrients, and are easily absorbed by the body, and you eat the whole fish including the bones. Absolute superfood. Eggs are about 15% protein, spread between the yolk and the white. Most of the fat is in the yolk, so whole eggs are best because remember, we like natural fats. Eggs are an excellent natural food, so if it's within the budget, free range is best because the hens should be eating a more natural diet rather than just grains, but any eggs are okay. We'll talk a bit about dairy elsewhere, but it is a very good source of protein and natural fat. So Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, full-fat cheese, sour cream, and all those sorts of things are fantastic. Now, I'm not an expert in plant proteins, but there are lots of excellent plant protein-based sources. As I've mentioned, the amino acids can be a little hard for our body to extract from plants. So if it's within your preferences and beliefs, I prefer you to enjoy plant protein along with animal proteins. Probably the most important plant-based proteins are the legumes, including beans, peas, soya beans, tofu, chickpeas and lentils. You can kind of mix these into your meals to add to the protein content. Nuts, including peanuts and peanut butter, almonds and Brazil nuts, are reasonable protein sources as well. Cashews I'd be careful with. They have a higher carb content, so perhaps not too many of those. In terms of the seeds, so pumpkin seeds and flax seeds are excellent, and chia is pretty good as well, although it's hard to eat large volumes of those seeds at a time. Some of the traditional grains, including buckwheat and quinoa and oats, have moderate protein. You will get a bit of an insulin response to these because of the carb content, but not a bad one. But just be cautious about the overall volumes of grains. So to recap, protein's the thing to think of first with your meal, include it with every meal. Be guided by the percentage of protein, but don't worry about weighing or measuring servings. Combine some animal and plant sources. Try and do that at every meal if you can. Our bariatric surgery program gives you access to a specialised nutritionist who can help and knows far more about this stuff than I ever will. We look forward to discussing all of this with you when we catch up in person.